Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today we're going to talk a little bit about houseplants. Now, I definitely want to be honest here. I am not really a houseplant type person. The plants I like to grow, I really prefer them to be productive. Now, if these houseplants can be productive and give me joy, then I think that will work. I don't want to have a lot of stress in trying to make them grow, which has always been the case with growing houseplants with me. I always kill them within a couple of months because I have not ever been able to figure out the proper growing conditions for them. But I decided, since I got this basket of houseplants, which by the way has given me a bloom on the peace lily, which is giving me hope. But I got this basket of houseplants as a goodbye gift for my accounting job. And I've decided that I want to try and figure out what they are, what their needs are, and see if I can get them to live without having a lot of stress and with having more joy in them. So these next couple of videos are going to be, number one, today's video is going to show you what I have for the houseplants and what I've learned about their care and where I went to get that information. And then the second video is going to be where I separate these houseplants out, put them in potting soil, and see if we can get them to grow and see if they bring me joy. So, to learn about these houseplants, I went to several different areas. First, I went to Facebook, and there's this wonderful Facebook group in Utah called Utah Plant, and it's all about houseplants. So I was able to send pictures, and they were able to identify the plants for me, so I know exactly what I have. Then the next thing I did is I went onto Google and started Googling articles that I thought were useful and looked like they were a little accurate. You know, hopefully they were accurate. And got information from there. And then I went onto YouTube and started watching YouTube videos on these plants. Now, I really like Plantarina's videos, I found. She's very detailed and she has a lot of great information. So that's where I got the information about these plants. Now, I tend to need information in front of me if I'm going to be able to do detailed work. So for example, these houseplants are not familiar to me. I really don't know the care for them. So I decided I need to have some sort of record that's available so that I can look at that and know what the care is for each one of these houseplants, when I need to water them, when I need to fertilize them, so I don't forget and just end up fertilizing and watering them all at the same time. So let me show you what I've done so that I can have the records available until I really understand how to take care of these houseplants. So right here is my actual seed notebook. This notebook is going to be staying in my grow room, and I will show you my grow room in a little bit. I decided that if I could put the information for each plant in this seed notebook that's going to be in this grow room, then it'll be easy for me to pull out if I don't remember how much water these plants need, or if I look at them and they're not thriving, see if I need to move them to a different area of the room that gets different light. So anyway, what I've done is I've taken a picture of each plant, written the name on top that I got, scientific name, because I always like to have the scientific names, and then information on each type of plant. Now the information that I put, and let me see if I can scroll in here a little bit so you can see. Number one, the type of pot, because I need all the details to begin with. Otherwise I screw things up. So the type of pot. Now the first plant we're going to discuss is this little crouton. I think it's really pretty. And what I found out about the croutons is these plants can get top heavy. So it needs a pot that won't tip over. Now the pots that I'm going to use are a little on the smaller side because these plants are smaller. And as I get used to these plants, and if they don't die, then I will pot them up into different pots. But anyway, the first pot, and I will show you that in the next video, the pot for the crouton needs to be one that won't tip over. Soil. This one needs rich, well-drained soil and a well-aerated soil. It likes to be kept moist but not wet. So now I know that I need a potting soil that has good drainage for the crouton. And it's going to need to stay moist but not overly wet. So it's going to need good drainage. Next, watering. It doesn't need a lot of water, which is interesting because it needs to stay moist. So we're going to have to figure that out. Water when the top quarter is dry, likes to be kept moist but not wet. So that's the information that I found, and we're going to have to really work at it to make sure I give it the right amount of water. Fertilizer, only fertilize in the spring and summer. With my veggies, I tend to like to fertilize a little bit every single time I water. So I may need to have a separate pot for the houseplants and make sure I do not over fertilize them. Lighting likes bright indirect light. Too direct and it will burn the leaves. Too low a light and the leaves will turn green. So at least I know, if I start seeing the leaves burn, then it's got too much light. If they start turning green, then I'll need to move them into a higher amount of light. Then the temperature range. It looks like the croutons like to have a temperature range between 60 and 80 degrees. And this room stays right in the mid 70s, so that should be fine. Next is humidity. Now, I do not have a humidifier in this room, and I don't want to have to get one if I don't need to, but there's a lot of plants in this room. It's closed off. I've covered the grate for the air conditioning and the heater. And I put a lot of my pots on pebbles and allow water to collect in there every once in a while. So the humidity in this room is definitely higher than the rest of this house, but I'm not sure what percentages it is. Now, if my plants start looking distressed, I may need to start checking into that a little bit more and maybe find ways to adjust the humidity. And then the last thing I like to put is propagation. Looks like you can propagate croutons by cuttings, and if I end up liking to grow these plants, then maybe I will propagate some. So we'll see. The jury's still out. So let's move on to the next plant. Now this is the next plant right here. I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Dracaena? I don't know. Anyway, as I learn how to grow them, maybe I'll learn how to pronounce them. So for the pot for the Dracaena, it says that it will grow in any size pot, including small ones. So we'll just use the pots that I've got. Soil, it needs more peat or coconut coir to hold moisture. So for the watering, it looks like it doesn't need a ton of water. It says wait until completely dry before watering. So this is one reason why I'm glad I created these pages that I can look at before I water the plants. So I can remember that the Dracaena probably needs to be a little drier than the crouton before I water it. I also found that the Dracaena does not like to be fertilized. Now we're going to have to wait and see. So like I said, I'm probably going to have to keep a separate watering can that does not have fertilizer in it for my houseplants. And that way I can fertilize them when they need it and leave the ones that don't want to be fertilized. It says it doesn't like direct light, but it likes bright lights. They have the same temperature requirements as the crouton, and they need a little bit less humidity, it looks like, than the croutons. And it looks like I can propagate the Dracaena if I like them by cuttings also, and you can just stick them directly in the soil according to Plantarina. Next is the prayer plant, and I think this one is actually the prettiest one in this basket. I really like the variegation on the leaves. Another name for it is Maranta. Now this is one that I would really like to try and keep alive. So we're going to work at this one a lot. Looks like they like to be root bound. So the pot says they like to be root bound. They like to be kept moist but well drained. And I think that it's probably a lot like the crouton, where you don't let them get too dry, but you also don't overwater them. It says they're sensitive to salts and minerals in the water. Now I've read a lot of things about watering plants and salt sensitivity and using bottled water rather than tap water, and I know our water has a lot of calcium in it. It has a lot of salts in it. So I'm going to start trying with tap water because I hate to go out and especially buy water for houseplants. But if the edges start turning brown, I may have to go see if trying bottled water works. So that's what it says. If you have too much salts in the water, that the edges will start to turn brown. It says they like to be fertilized, so we'll fertilize these a little bit more often than the Dracaena. And it says they like medium direct light. I don't know exactly what that means, but we'll switch it around until we figure out the best place for it. And it says these plants like higher humidity. So what I may need to do is group these together with more plants that have a lot of moisture around them. I also learned that you can propagate these plants by root cutting, and you can also start cuttings in water. Now the next plant is the peace lily. This one has seemed to be really happy in the pot that I have it in. It actually is giving me a little flower right now. So I'm having hopes that I can grow these well. So first of all, for the pot for the peace lily, it says you don't need giant pots, but just about any pot will do. I may need to add a little vermiculite to the potting soil for this one because it says it likes to keep moisture. Besides staying moist, it needs a more humid environment. So this is another one that I'll need to group together with plants that have more humidity in that area. And it needs more fertilizer than the other plants. It says it needs to be fertilized monthly or bi-monthly. This one does not like direct light. It likes indirect light. And you can propagate them by division. So if I decide that I like peace lilies and I am able to grow them well, then maybe I can just start dividing them and have more. Now the last plant is one that I've actually grown in the past and had a tiny bit of success for a little bit longer than other houseplants, and that's the Philodendron. And that is this one with the heart leaf on it. So it's a heart leaf Philodendron. What I learned about philodendrons is they like to be root bound a little bit, so I will be able to keep it in the same pot for a little while. This is another plant that likes to have soil that's moist but well drained. It doesn't like the water to be held around the roots. And this is one that likes fertilizer a little more than all of the rest of them. It says to fertilize every time you water with probably a half-strength fertilizer. And it sounds like this one can tolerate low light, but it does need indirect light, brighter indirect light to thrive. And it sounds like this one is also the easiest one to propagate. You can actually cut it down to a node. It's kind of hard to find a node on here because it's a really small plant, but that's where the leaf connects to the stem. It will root all along the stem that way. So you can just take it, cut off the leaves and stick it in soil. So that is everything I know about the house plants that I have sitting here. So my next video, I am going to take these plants, divide them out into pots, try and see if I can choose the right kind of soil for them, and see if I can actually get them to grow without killing them. So I'm really glad that I created the instructions here that I can reference every time I water, just to make sure I am not forgetting and watering some plants too much or others too little, or fertilizing them when they don't need it. I am really interested to hear what you guys have done to learn how to grow houseplants. Do you go into as much detail as I have? Are you as anal as I am? Do you kill plants as often as I do? I'd really like to know. So if you like my videos, please like and subscribe, share them with your friends. Go out and enjoy your plants and have a wonderful garden adventure.